Good afternoon, Happy New Year, and welcome to the latest issue of Print21, the weekly video news bulletin for the Australia and New Zealand print industries. This issue is sponsored by Ball & Govt, Australia's largest supplier of printable materials and press room consumables. News for the printing industry kicks off this year with the federal government reaching a new low in its fixation with digital communication. It wants to ditch printing the voice referendum information pamphlet, which would run to multiple pages and go to 9.3 million households, making it by far the biggest print job of the year, if it were to be printed. The government's Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters has signalled the pamphlet will not be printed, causing an outcry from both the yes and the no camps. They say no printed pamphlet from the government will cause much of the population to get their information on the referendum from social media, which will not have the same commitment to facts or truth that the government pamphlet would have. The pamphlet has been required by referendums for the past 100 years. Amongst other parts parts that would contain, it outlines the referendum procedure, has a 2,000-word essay from each side outlining why voters should support their case. However, a host of organisations, in response to the decision from both sides of the debate, are challenging it, saying that no pamphlet will provide a vacuum which will be gleefully taken up by those with little regard for the realities or sensitivities. The print industry, of course, is aghast that the government dump what would be the biggest print job of the year and is the primary method why people receive information, and of course will be a healthy injection of cash into the industry. Kelly Northwood, CEO at PVACA, said a decision to drop the referendum pamphlet doesn't make any sense and would be an especially poor outcome given that the most digitally excluded demographic in the country is the Indigenous population. Why on earth would the government, she says, leave them to digital information that they don't have access to? Referendums are critically important. She said it's important to make sure everyone is included in the debate, no one is left to the fake news of the internet, and she says print is the only way to achieve that. Some 2.8 million people in Australia, including many from the Indigenous community, are not digitally enabled. Print, though, of course, would reach them all. The sad saga at Opal's Maryvale mill has claimed the jobs of 37 print paper staff. They've been stood down, with a further 120 about to face the same fate, as production at Australia's only printing papers manufacturing plant grinds to a halt. Why paper manufacturing ceased just before Christmas, with the company unable to source a new supply of logs. Logs necessary, of course, as the previous supplier, Vic Forest, was forced to shut down operations over the impact a judge decided these logging contractors were having on a rare possum. Vic Forest has actually appealed the Supreme Court decision, which came after a years-long campaign by local activists. The mill at Maryvale produces the reflex copy paper, which is 80% of the copy market in Australia, as well as other copy papers, and a range of UWF uncoated wood-free papers used in offset printing and for envelopes and forms. Local paper suppliers say they have been able to source alternate products from overseas. Unions fear the jobs, well paid in local terms, will be permanently lost. The mill is the biggest employer in the area. The Maryvale situation represents an element of the current national debate over the environment in a microcosm. A business being forced to close, well-paid jobs lost, while that business claims its activities are not actually harmful. State-owned Vic Forest has the rights to manage forests. In return, it gets to log about 0.1% of the trees each year, most of which it says are either fallen, a bushfire risk, or stifling growth in the forest. However, activists disagree, and they've long been campaigning for an end to logging. Now that paper that would have been produced at Maryvale locally, that will of course have to be shipped into the country with associated emissions from transport. Describing the situation as complex, Opal says it has made no long-term decisions about its white paper manufacturing. In other news, Print21 reported that major mailing house MMW3degrees went into administration just before Christmas. There'll be much more to come on this story. Inkjet pioneer Memjet has set up a manufacturing site here in Sydney, bringing back production from overseas, is citing supply chain issues and the advanced manufacturing capabilities as the reason. That's it for this week's edition of Print21, the first of the year. For all these stories in full detail, go to print21.com.au, the news platform for the industry. Thanks to our sponsor Ball & Govt. This is Wayne Robinson signing off for another week's issue.